look, people who have a real celebrity, a person who everybody follows on Twitter and all other streams. There is David Spinks here. But like my internet feed is full of people holding his book. It's like, oh, David, please like my picture of myself holding your book, and yeah, the business of belonging. So, David, how does it? Or wait, do we introduce ourselves,
Yeah,
or like
because
are we
we did
overshadowed?
we need to introduce
Are we
ourselves first.
overshadowed by the
Diving
celebrity
right
on the stream?
into it.
Okay, let's talk about briefly who we are. So I'm Lara. I'm lying about my job. I'm telling that I'm designer, and what else? That I'm building friendships, community manager, and so on and so on. So
No, she's cool. She's also editing this podcast, and she's a producer, and she's a professional Gen Z.
yeah,
Professional Gen Z. Anna, who are you and what are you
Yes.
doing here?
Got it.
Hey, I'm writing newsletter about communities. I am an engineer. Everyone thinks I'm an engineer, but I'm already a content creator. And also I have like maybe thousands of hobbies that I am exploring at the same time. So
and I'm
Thousand.
stopping you
Here we
from
are.
this.
yes, and she is my stop sign from launching a
Yes.
product every week. So
Yes.
And currently, I'm juggling this stream with all the monitors and all the techs. And I used to be a celebrity, sort of small celebrity, small, very small. I have complex
Oh
on
my
that.
god.
In game dev world, in dev world, now I'm pretty much just talking on the internet.
I'm
with
so cool. I'm
this.
so cool.
Yeah, Lara wants to be cool as well. Lara, you will
10
be cool
years
at some
ago
point.
in Unity,
No,
I
no.
remember.
Yeah.
See, I used to be a celebrity. But David, you are a real celebrity. How does it feel? Since everybody tries to get a piece of you, like at least within the community industry. So how does it feel where everybody wants to pretend they know who David is and that they talk to you? Oh, I talked to David on Twitter.
I don't know. That feels weird to answer. I don't feel like a celebrity. I just feel like I've just been very active in a specific community for a very long time. So I've gotten to know a lot of people and created a lot of content and written a lot about it. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's really cool to just see the book out in the world. You mentioned like people posting photos with it, but that does bring me a lot of joy because it's just the book has felt like this thing that's kind of the culmination of all the things I've learned in my career. And it's the hardest thing I've ever worked on. Like writing this book was by far the hardest thing I've ever done. And then so much of the work we do in online community is on the internet. It's in a computer screen. And so to like see the physical thing that I can hold and touch and then see other people holding it and reading it, there's definitely a different vibe from that. That's really cool. And I'm really grateful for.
On your Instagram, you are also holding your book. So probably that's what people do. That's how people figure out how they should interact with yourself.
Exactly. This is how you hold it. That might be my only Instagram post last like 2 years as well. So
Okay. Okay, we wanted to discuss about the posts on Facebook. We actually had a very interesting story today in the morning with Oleg. So you wrote a post, something about what it was about, that you cannot measure community because
You were talking about that you can't perfectly measure a community, and there is no way to measure how many connections you can have inside the community, or you can't quantify it. And I think we all, like on this stream, empathize with that idea. But for me personally, and I will let Lera chime in with her thoughts, I think, yes, community can't be measured, but still you need to have some kind of metrics to at least track its growth. So
I mean,
what?
you can technically measure. This is my opinion. I will just tell David. You will just tell your brilliant opinion after me. So, I think that community, you should consider this as friendship. Like you can technically measure like friendship with your friends in your company, but why would you? Like who does this?
Right.
Only creepy people do this. So I think the same thing. You should consider your communities. Businesses should consider their communities. And that's the kind of fight we
Yeah.
had with Oleg today.
Yeah, you argued about this topic today.
Yeah,
It's a good argument. It's a good debate. Yeah, I think like it's for me. It's look, I wrote an entire book about how to measure community and how to measure the business value of community. I think it's extremely important that we put data and numbers behind the work that we're doing, and we're able to show clearly using data what the value of community is. That said, I think there's a balance, and there's taking it too far where I don't think we want to set the expectation that you're going to be able to measure community the same way you're able to measure, let's say, like advertising or A/B testing different designs on a website. And the reality is, we have been trained in the world of business over the last 20 years, thanks to like the internet and the digital age,
That's
to be able to measure
disgusting.
everything.
Yeah.
We get data on everything, and everything's very fast, right? We have growth hacking, we have SEO that you expect to see results in a couple weeks. We have content marketing that has like a big burst of traffic right away. And I think companies are thinking very short term a lot of the time about how do they grow, and how do they engage their customers. But community is not a short term play, it's a long term play. And I think we may do ourselves a disservice if we try to say like everything in community can be measured. Because I think exactly like looking at it like friendship, you can measure maybe the number of friends that you have.
Yeah,
You could maybe ask for feedback on like the
but you
quality of
cannot
friendship.
measure impact of the
Yeah.
friendship in the
Exactly.
same.
Right. It's like there's a Gary Vee quote from a while back that was like, "What's the ROI of your mom?" And it was like the same
Okay.
idea. It's like I can't measure the return having a mother, but I know that having a mother is extremely valuable and important. And it's
Yes.
that's the kind of message I was getting at in that post, that for businesses who are investing in community, yes, lead with a business objective. Yes, measure everything you can and get data behind the work you're doing. But you
But
also
don't
have to
get crazy
recognize that
about this.
there's an incredible amount of value that you're not going to be able to measure. You just have
Yes.
to understand and believe and feel and see, and your customers and your members are going to be able to feel it and see it.
Alec, can you repeat the thing that you told me today right after we've been discussing this? Because this is very interesting. You told some bullshit and I want you to repeat this.
Yeah, so in next episode, I'm gonna introduce you like a person who puts me under the bus all the time. So
You're
that's
welcome.
like you're not only a professional Gen Z now, professional bus under the bus thrower.
Yes.
So she read the post and she was like, "Yeah, look, this dude is right. Like he's talking something real." And I was like, "No, but think, measure." And the more I talk about like how important it is for businesses to measure something, the more I understand that you two are right, or maybe you three.
Of course. I just waited for this phrase.
And there is a story. Like I remember my early days at Unity, when Unity was a very, very small company, right? And it was more like I just remember how the product was subpar on the other products on the market, but we were community led, and people were actually buying not the product but the idea, but the community. And now there's like a company that went on the IPO and like has like that's pretty much probably number one game engine in the market right now. And it grew from the idea, from the community. We didn't measure the community, but even today, people use Unity because, well, they know other people who use Unity, and that is it. So that's how I figured out I was wrong. You shouldn't measure. You should just believe and invest in people, in connections.
You have to do both. Like I talk about in the book the difference between market norms and social norms, which is a concept from Dan Ariely, who's a behavioral psychologist, and looks at behavioral economics. And basically, like we all live in either market norms or social norms and how we interact with each other, right? So market norms is you're selling something and I'm buying it. You sell a service, I buy the service, or you sell a car, I buy the car. Those are market norms. They're transactional. There's a dollar value assigned to it. And then there's social norms, which is friendship, relationships. It's us doing each other a favor because we care about each other. If you were moving and you asked me for a favor to help you move, I would do it because I'm a friend, not because you're paying me, right? Maybe you buy some pizza and beer, but it's a social contract. And businesses historically have only been functioning in market norms for a while now. But the reality is, the thing that makes a lot of companies very successful is actually social norms. It's a feeling, it's a connection, it's It's people wanting, having an intrinsic motivation to contribute and be involved and advocate for that. It's emotional, it's human. So that's kind of the point, is like community is a very clear illustration of both of those dynamics, where yes, we live in a business world that is transactional, and at the end of the day, the people on the board, the executives, the people making decisions in the company have to decide where to allocate funds. And if they see very clearly with data the results from marketing and sales and product, but they can't see it for community, yeah, though they might invest in community because they believe in the social norms and the social value, but they're going to limit that investment and it's going to stay constrained. So you need the data, but you also can't only look at the data and say like, well, this is how we're going to measure the impact and value of our community, because you just have to recognize there's an entire area of social impact, of social norms, of emotional connection that you're developing with your customers. And it turns out that's actually what can make the difference between a company being successful or not.
I think there is also one very important thing about communities that at least got me into that industry, let's say. It's privacy, because when you're thinking about like Facebook and other marketing channels, you as user you are following this specific page on Facebook, let's say, and they take your data, they take away a lot of things from you. And when you are joining the community, you at least feel some kind of safety that you're not at the mercy of the algorithm, you are not being juggled with all those data points about you, and the companies are not targeting you because they know that you have been to this specific store three months ago. But in the community, you are not just building a product together, let's say, but you are together solving a very specific problem rather than like being targeted blindly by marketing channels.
I mean, I would challenge that a little bit. Like we talk constantly about like, boy, would it be awesome if we had better data on our community so we can better understand it and then deliver better content to people that's more relevant to them and make sure they find the conversations and people that are most relevant to them. And what we're talking about there is an algorithm, right? We're all like optimizing for how do we, if we're building community at scale, these online communities with hundreds of thousands of members or tens of thousands of members even, we're still looking at how do we develop technology that makes it easier to provide people with a more custom, intimate experience within those spaces. So like I kind of I think the point in data ownership and privacy is more that people should have control and say over what these companies are doing with their data, and they should be able to pull out of it at any time and delete their data. A lot of the things that GDPR has created as a standard are really good things, but I don't fully buy into the idea that like a company having your data is inherently evil, because I think like as community builders, we all want to use data to make the experience better for our members.
And not evil, but maybe less invasive. Let's not call it evil. Not evil for sure.
Sure, invasive, but you're also like on the Facebook platform. If it then it's like invading you in other places, and you're getting ads in other places, which is something that happens as well. I mean, yeah, it's we're living in like a weird world where you say something and then you see an ad for it a day later, and
Instagram
there's a
users
lot of
apparently
work to be
here.
done. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, I think, to have more standards around how companies can use that data and how it's used to target you and influence. You know, then you get into influencing your opinions and politics, and everyone,
And
saw how Facebook could impact, presidential elections and people's opinions on matters and the spread of disinformation. So I think like we're all working towards this goal of creating this like perfect system of people. We're using data to engage people perfectly and give them the right content, but there will always be abuses of every system. And I think that's the big thing that a lot of these companies have failed at, is creating safeguards against abuses, whether those are cultural abuses like trolling and racism, or more technical abuses of actually abusing people's data.
And I'm listening to you, and it feels to me like we're again talking about emotions versus numbers.
As
What is more
always.
important for the business? Yeah, and Lara fights heavily against that, and she's infusing that mindset to myself. And
I'm not fighting. I'm just saying that like emotions are more important. Values are more.
And that's what I want to throw at David, actually. Since, I mean, I understand why emotions are like people, connections, emotions are important for Lera because she's young and she's not a, well, she's like a founder, but like she's not a big director with thousands of people under her. And but David, how did you come to an idea that people and relations are more important than numbers, and how do you explain this to your VP and C-suite peers?
I mean, I don't think I'm saying that emotions are more important than numbers. I think from a professional standpoint, I think it's about a balance. Everything is an ebb and flow. Everything's a spectrum in life. There's no black and white. There's no like emotions are always going to be more important than numbers. Depends on the situation and the context. But look, if I'm going into a meeting with our board or other executives on the team, and I come presenting, a slide deck full of emotion, and I don't have any data, I'm almost guaranteed to not get more resources and budget and be able to invest in the things that I think are really important for creating that meaningful community that I'm trying to create. And I think that shows up in lots of places in our life, right? And so, our age or who we manage doesn't actually matter. Like we all have experiences where data is more important and where emotions more important, right? When you think about taking a new job, are you optimizing for salary or are you optimizing for something that you really care about and you feel really passionate about? And there's no right answer to that. If you need money to sustain yourself and your family and to live a safe life and provide a better life for your family, then you need to optimize for money. People don't always have the luxury of pursuing their passion.
So
For other people,
basically,
they're in a position where passion does trump the money and the numbers. So it's always a trade off.
so basically, what I heard from your speech before that you said, so basically, you need to show those like attention, retention things just basically to your boss that he or she will give you money. This is why you need those numbers and metrics. Because this
I
is
don't
how I
think
heard it.
so.
Because like I still feel that community is like it's just like big friendship. And
Or
like
is
you
it?
need to those
Well,
numbers to show you to your
Or is
boss
yeah.
it?
that this friendship works or doesn't
It
work.
it's a
You
good
cannot.
question. I don't think that's true because we also use numbers to hold ourselves accountable and feel like we know we're on the right track. Because only feeling something can take you so far. But if I feel like the community is doing well, but the numbers are showing that engagement is dropping or people are joining and then 2 weeks later they're disappearing from the community, our stickiness is dropping. Like the numbers can actually show you a lot of things as well. So
Okay,
I
so
don't think it's either
what is
or. It's
engagement then?
having both as part of the story.
What is engagement? What are you counting as a business as engagement? Because, for example, would it be the same if I'm just coming and lurking? Would it be the same if I'm like participating? Or like if I'm buying, it only counts? What exactly is engagement? Like what is important for businesses?
Yeah, engagement's one of those bullshit broad terms that people throw around.
Yeah,
But you
this
can
is
break it down in a lot of different ways. So, at CMX, we look at stickiness. So we look at daily active users over monthly active users. So dividing how many people show up in one day divided by how many people show up in a month. And that gives you a good idea of how sticky your community is. That's a stickiness score. We look at total active users. So how many people have posted, commented, or liked over the last 30 days. And we also
okay.
complement all of that with surveys. So we get qualitative feedback as well to understand if people are getting value out of the community and if they feel safe and welcome in the community.
Okay, so imagine like, will I bring the same value if I'm coming and texting every day, or like if I'm coming once a month and like I don't know buying some product? Is it the same value for the community for the business, or is different? How do you count this? Because like
Or
it's a bit, it's
Yeah, so this is a really good question. And I think this is a big area for growth for our industry, for community builders, is to be able to start to break down engagement more specifically and then be able to tie back different forms or levels of engagement to business impact. Because someone who joins a community and just lurks for 6 months is obviously not going to be as engaged and most likely not going to be as valuable to the business. There's a less chance that they're going to convert into a user or customer or whatever your metric is than someone who has attended 3 events, who's posted once a week, who's engaged and commented on other people's questions. So, drilling down into how different levels and formats of engagement correlates or drives actual business value, I think is a big opportunity for people who work in this space today.
Which I hear is like we have to optimize our communities for all of this. And from my best understanding, that's what you call community ops. And that's what your latest podcast episode is about, David, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
there
think
is a
community
tweet
operations
post.
is yeah, go ahead.
You tweeted that 12 months from now, every enterprise community team will have at least one community operations pro, and
Yeah.
that's what the latest episode is about. And can you talk a bit more about that? Since community ops is hot, like everything in the community is hot, but community ops
Yeah.
is hot even within the community professionals industry.
Yeah.
So what's cool about that?
Yeah. It's like niche hot. It's like hot to people who already think community is hot. I'm really, I'm thrilled about the growth of community operations because if you look at most people who have gotten into community, a lot of the time they are in it because they really like engaging with people and hosting events and facilitating discussions. But if they're like me, and a lot of them are, we're not always the best operators. We're not very like systems oriented. We're not great at creating scalable automated systems. And so we're seeing this kind of more specialization of community teams now, where you'll have someone who's specialized in engagement or in running programs, and then you have someone who's specialized in operations. And that operator has a whole wealth of opportunities to make communities more engaging, more effective, make teams more efficient. And it's everything from like, how do you automate processes, right? Like Tiffany Oda was my guest on Masters of Community, and she talked about how at Salesforce they would get thousands of applications every month for people who want to become chapter leaders for their Trailblazer program. Now, for the one person who is running that program, how can they process thousands of applications every month? It's extremely time consuming. And so she developed an automated process that helped them filter out a lot of those applications, organize them, and make sure that the ones that are getting to a person to review are ones that are the best fit, that are most likely to actually be successful at being a host. And so there's all these things that community managers and community builders do very manually today. It might be welcoming new members to the community. It could be reporting on metrics and setting up dashboards. It could be connecting all your systems. So if you're using Facebook groups and Slack and Discord and a forum, and you have an email list and you use Bevy or Eventbrite or something else for your events, you have all these different tools. Are all of those tools talking to each other? Is all of your data centralized? Is it a cohesive experience for your community members, or do they have 7 different logins and they're going to all these different places to participate? And so these are all kind of operational challenges that community teams have, that until this point it's just been kind of like one person whose job it was to do it all, to engage, to run events, to measure it, to track it, to create dashboards and try to automate all these processes. But if you have someone who's specialized in that, it can really accelerate the impact that a community team will have.
And I
And
think the
from
most hardest challenge of all of this is to understand what kind of processes you have in your community. Because, of course, there can be some processes like onboarding that everyone will have, but some communities will have event management and some communities will not have it. Or some communities will lean very heavily into like podcasting or something like that. And there's this question of how to break down, even how far to break down your community operations and what are the building blocks of each community. So
Absolutely. Yeah, but like the cool thing is what's going to happen is these things are going to become more standardized over the next 12 months as more community teams build out operations and operations teams. Yeah, like there's a lot of companies, a lot of communities that are running event programs or have a welcome onboarding flow or need to source applications for influencer programs. These are all processes that, I'd love to through CMX, it's like everything we build, we always just kind of open source it. We just make it freely available for everyone else. And so, like as we're building out our operations, we would just share that out openly. So if someone else is now trying to automate a process using these different tools, they'll be able to just use the same exact process that we did. And I think like more and more teams are going to do that, and we're going to create better and better standards for how to do this work across the industry.
And let me remind you that it was very similar when all the social networks appeared. Like everybody was doing like different things, and then there were tools to sort of do like a cockpit, like from the control panel to all the social networks. So
Right.
communities is similar, just much more complex because you don't broadcast; you actually interact with people at all those different channels. And
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what's interesting, right? It's like social media, generally, you're looking at audiences, and audiences are one to many. And so the complexity, they're still very complex, right? Like when we started getting into social media, it was a lot more complex to track all of your social media engagement compared to like a blog or a website, newsletter, or an advertising campaign. But we've been able to create systems to be able to track engagement across all these platforms. With community, it's not one to many, it's many to many. And so that's the holy grail, I think. If we can figure out how to truly capture, measure, aggregate, and make sense of the data around how people in our community are interacting with each other, how are they forming relationships, how are they helping each other, and gain a deeper understanding of what qualifies as somebody truly feeling like they're a part of the community and connected in the community, that's going to give us this really, really interesting and deep insight into how healthy our community is, how it's impacting our business, and hopefully it will help community professionals be more efficient at managing their communities across all these different spaces.
but I'm listening to you and thinking. So probably currently, pretty much all the companies have social media presence. Pretty much every business has like some sort of media presence. How do these businesses figure out that it's time to convert their followers, their audience into a community? How do they know when it's time to start a community for them? What is your thinking when you talk to businesses about that?
I think you can do it anytime. I think what's important is that you know why you're doing it. I think the right time is when you have a clear objective that you're like, okay, we want to improve our customer support program. Great. How can we take a community driven approach to achieving that outcome? That's a good time to launch that support community. Or we really want to grow and we believe a community chapter program or an ambassador program could be really effective. Great. That's a great time to launch that program. Or if you're a very early stage startup, you might say like, we are still looking for product market fit, and we really want to stay close to our customers and make them feel involved in this process of building our product and learn a lot very quickly. And so we're going to just set up something simple like a Slack group or Discord or a message board, or it could be like a focus group or like an advisory council, and you're going to launch that at the earliest stage of your business because it's an opportunity to bring people together to help you find product market fit. So anytime, there's no right size or time for a company, but what's important is that you know why first. You don't just start building community for the sake of building community, because that's where you fall into the trap of, building engagement and then afterward trying to figure out what the business value is. And you'll end up building a lot of things that probably aren't going to impact the business value, and that's where it becomes just much harder to validate and measure.
And I might sound as a total fanboy, but again, I want to bring one of your tweets here because I retweeted it and that's resonated me strongly because, well, Lera and I do pretty much this. Like, businesses come to us and talk about communities, and like they want to use community to get whatever sales, like something on the business, and then it takes time for us to explain exactly again what you tweeted, that community is the goal and product is the means, that it's all about the people. And it's just fun that, like, that's how life works. It's hard to figure it out just by yourself. I mean, like, there's social media, you use it for as a marketing tool, and community is something else. That's people. You cannot use people for your goals because that's not how it works. And it's just fun to talk about that.
Oh my god, we're all so
Yeah.
smart here. Oh my god.
Yeah, we figured it out
Yes.
months before.
I mean, if there's anything I've learned from like writing the book and doing all this work is just how much we don't know, and there's no right answer. And like I ebb and flow. Like I said, I wrote this whole book about the business of belonging, and I think right now I'm just like feeling in a phase of kind of that flow back to like, yeah, but like why are we building a business, right? We don't build a product just for the sake of people using the product. We build a product because it helps people do something, and do something usually has something to do with community, right? Like every product is just helping us live better lives, be more collaborative, create for each other, build tools and solve problems for each other. And so that tweet was just kind of thinking on, it's more of like a philosophical way of thinking about building community, and flipping the mindset from how do we build a community in order to get people to use our product more, into thinking about how can our product be a means for community. Because I kind of just believe that at the end of the day, community is the most important thing in the world. Like that's what matters most to humans, is our relation to each other. It's like what we all do here. It's we build societies, like we compare ourselves, we develop cities and ecosystems. Like it's all just us working together and collaborating and coexisting. And the products we build are built to help that end. And so when you're thinking about community, think about how your community, like I use Nike as an example. How can your shoes, the shoes that Nike creates, be used to create community for people? Or if you're Impossible Foods and you're making vegetarian burgers, like how can those burgers create an opportunity to create community for people, like organizing vegetarian barbecues or something that people can come together around, right? All these tools, just think about how can your product create community rather than how can you use community in order to drive people to use your product.
That's
And we
right.
have time for one
Yeah.
more question. So, Liero or Anna, go for it, or otherwise, I'm gonna turn
Anna,
back
please.
my fanboy hat.
Oh, I'm constantly thinking about this very specific thing that, as you mentioned, a lot of businesses, and we also see this, that a lot of businesses mainly are thinking of using community as another sales funnel, or like top of the funnel for another marketing. But I think, how can you help businesses figure out that 300 people who are constantly active inside of a community are sometimes much better than having like 2,000 people following you on Facebook? Do you need to explain that, or
Yay, attention, retention.
yeah, what?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's like quality over quantity. It's what's the actual goal you're trying to achieve. We're going through this process right now with CMX and Bevy, and again, it's like a constant work in progress, and we're working towards this like ideal of like knowing exactly how to have the most impact on the business. But we can look at all of our events, and we can say, okay, our events have driven this many MQLs, marketing qualified leads, or sales accepted leads, or all these metrics along the funnel. But at the end of the day, it's how many of those led to closed deals, how many actually became customers. And so, if I have 20 people come to an event and 10 of them become customers, that's much more valuable than 1,000 people coming to an event and one of them becoming a customer, from a business standpoint, from an ROI standpoint. And so you just have to look at like what is the actual outcome that you're driving toward, and which of your community engagement programs are actually resulting in that outcome.
And we still have few more minutes, so let's put it this way, David. Like when you don't talk, or when people don't ask you about communities, attention, retention, numbers, KPIs, and stuff, what do you talk about?
My work life seems to be kind of overtaken by community for the most part, but I like talking about entrepreneurship and startups. I've started 3 companies. I've bootstrapped. I've raised funds. I've gone through the grind of building multiple companies, and so I like helping other founders and entrepreneurs. I like talking about mental health and wellness. Certainly been on my own journey with um, focusing on mental health and taking care of myself through the ambitious work of building community and companies. And then I hang out with friends and we don't talk about tech or community at all. We just talk about basketball and I have a 10-month-old at
can
home,
relate.
and my good friends are all having babies now. So we're talking a lot about babies these days. A lot of baby talk.
Well, so you're gonna pop up on podcasts about babies soon, I guess, and then, well, that's
Maybe,
gonna go.
maybe. I mean, like I'm sure for all of you as well, like us community builders, every like new phase of our life, new challenges come up, and we always think about like, oh, there's an opportunity here to build community or
Out of
to
babies, community out
to
of
build a product.
babies.
So
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, maybe we should start a community for community managers who are parents because there's like a
Yeah.
unique set of challenges around that. Or
Monetize
you know,
everything.
Yes.
Monetize
Yes.
everything.
This is why
That's
Alec had an idea to build
communitize everything.
Yes, he even wanted to build a community out of my ex-boyfriends. So like we are
yeah,
crazy.
but like she has a lot, and we can monetize them. Like they're like it's a very good idea. I promise.
But like merch with like broken
No. Like, what if we put her boyfriends to a paid community where they have to pay to exit it?
Paid community.
Yeah, but like you pay to exit, not to enter, because
That sounds like the Saw, the screenplay of the Saw, the movie to me.
because I mean, but it's such a good idea. Think about it. Think about it.
Yes.
Good. When we start talking about my beard or her ex-boyfriends, it's usually time to
It's
end the
time
stream.
to end.
Yeah.
Do it, Liana.
That's the
Yeah.
sign. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Well, it's a sign
that
of a
was
good
very
co-host.
interesting. Yes.
Y'all
So
are
say
funny.
goodbye and let.
Yes, thank you very much for today's show. It
Thank
was very
you.
fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Of
Goodbye.
course.
Have a
Should we just all
nice.
awkwardly back away from the screens now?
Oh,
Can we get back
I'm
or
a
not
nice
yet?
person. My
That's how you
David.
should end all of your shows.
Okay.
You've been such a lovely person to have in a podcast. Have a very,
Yes.
very good day.
Hey,
Goodbye to you.
goodbye.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having
Bye.
me. Appreciate it.